everyone, welcome to Filipino on the Rise. I'm Crystal Fabella, host and founder. I really hope you enjoy this episode. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe so that you never miss out on new video content. You can find all episodes on most podcast platforms, including Apple, Spotify, Anchor, FM, and more. Thank you so much, and I hope you enjoy this episode.
If we're Filipino, what's mine is yours. My door is always open to you. My refrigerator is always open to you. If there's even a sliver of a piece of wood available on my floor, you can latag and sleep there. I think that Filipinos, we tend to want to be perfect and safe and research and do things. Just go out and do it. If given an opportunity, say yes, and then figure out how it's going to happen later.
Welcome to the Filipina on the Rise podcast, where I spotlight Filipina powerhouses, meaning Filipino women doing big things and making an impact. I want to highlight Filipino culture and modern-day successes and celebrate what it means to be a Filipina. Today, we're talking to Givelle Lamano, a defense attorney in the Bay Area, rated #1 criminal defense attorney in Oakland on Yelp. She runs her own all-women law practice, Lamano Law Office, one of the top-rated DUI defense firms in the Bay Area. Givelle received the Super Lawyer Rising Star Award in 2017 and 2018 and ranks in the top 2% of over 65,000 attorneys here. I first want to say thank you so much, Givelle, for letting me bring you on as my first guest. I'm definitely honored you embody a powerhouse Filipino, and I seriously can't wait for everyone to hear what you have to say. Just so you know, Givelle is holding her dog right now, swaddled in a blanket. So for my first question, Givelle, in your own words, who is Givelle Lamano and what do you do?
Sure. By profession, I'm a criminal defense lawyer. I run an all-women law firm based out of Oakland, California. Outside of that, I am a Filipina American. I am single. I have no kids. And as you mentioned earlier, I have a small Boston Terrier swaddled right now because she is my baby and has a medical condition. Thank you for allowing me to have her here during this interview.
Of course. So I would really like to learn more about your upbringing. So tell us about your upbringing and kind of the journey and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I was born in the Philippines in a place called Batangas in a small province named Lian. And I was born to a father who joined the military, and he joined the Navy. And my mother was a small town province girl who married my father, and because of my father's involvement in the military, we were able to come to the United States, and I was 3 years old. I came with my brother, who was 2. We later had a sister that was born in the United States. We struggled with a lot of the things that most Filipino Americans struggle with, citizenship, just getting acclimated to American society. We moved into a neighborhood called Hancock Park in Los Angeles, and we had a large house with about 6 or 7 families and sharing about, I believe, 4 to 5 bedrooms, and each family had 1 bedroom. Looking back, I think one of the great things about Filipinos is that no matter where you go, there's always Filipinos, and Filipinos welcoming you and helping you get settled. You know, you want to welcome your family members and other Filipinos into the United States. So I was raised in Los Angeles.
Givelle went to high school and said she almost dropped out, but at a young age, she knew that she wanted to start working, so she checked herself into continuation school as it got out earlier. She had her first job at 14 at a thrift shop in trendy Melrose, Los Angeles, and from there continued to work various customer service jobs. After graduating, she went to a private architecture school, describing why, as it frankly being the only school that would accept her, not having the best grades in community college or high school. But it was during a travel abroad trip in Rome that a question would transition her into her law career.
I was in Rome studying architecture when a good friend of mine asked me what my plans were after undergrad. And that's when it hit me that I would have to be a real adult and grow up. And actually, I was no longer a student. And so with fear of that, I decided to go to grad school. And law school seemed like an attractive endeavor. I was a little clueless in applying for law school, but ended up at Golden Gate University in San Francisco. And I think that was a very pivotal moment in my life. I strongly believe that you're an average of the 5 people you surround yourself with. And in Los Angeles, I found myself surrounded by a lot of the people, early teen pregnancy or, gang violence, drugs, and, not the healthiest crowd for a young person to grow up and, learn ambition. So when I went to law school, I surrounded myself with people from different walks of life, and they were really smart, and they were really ambitious, and they were really determined. And I felt like an outcast. I felt different. The first year was really hard, but after some time I ended up graduating law school. And when I graduated law school, I took the bar exam. The bar exam was also a big pivotal part of my life. I think statistically only 50% of the people that take that test, which is known to be one of the hardest exams in the United States. I believe
California one.
Right. It was a 3-day exam, and based on the school that you go to, the GPA that you have, your ranking in law school, you know, the numbers go down, and I didn't have the best numbers to back me up. I graduated at the bottom of my class. I was waitlisted for law school. So statistically, I shouldn't have passed the bar, but I kept my head down. I worked really hard, and I focused, and I passed the bar exam on the first try, which was one of the most amazing feelings in the world. And then I found that nobody would hire me. So I ended up starting my own practice, and now we are #1 for criminal defense and DUI online with Google and with Yelp and with Avo and other online platforms.
Just that happened. Now we're here.
And now we're here. Right.
No, that's amazing. And I'm sure there's a story behind how you were able to build your practice to the success that it is now. It seems like you have so much like confidence in who you are now and what factors shaped you, and just a lot of knowing like who you are as a person. Can you look back and in moments where you know, you're facing a lot of obstacles or adversities, like what pushed you through? What were your strengths or inner traits that really pushed you through?
Well, I think that you can't teach hungry.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things that I was ashamed of growing up around specifically, you know, I was ashamed to be poor. I was ashamed that my parents spoke Tagalog in the household. And, you know, growing up, I also found that my parents tended to be intimidated by anybody who was white or wore a suit or wore a uniform. I think all of those factors, you know, and the totality of just growing up in a home where there was a lot of fear caused me to learn responsibility at a young age, to find my voice at a young age. And there was just a lot of times where I had an identity crisis and I didn't know who I was and what I stood for. But as you get in your late 30s and into, you know, emotional maturity, you start to learn what your values are and what you stand by. And now I'm proud of some of the things that I grew up with that taught me to be hungry. So
could you describe maybe what your family is like? It could be your immediate family, and as you know, Filipinos actually always means extended family.
Sure. So my mother, she came to the United States and she didn't have any work experience. She got a job at Bank of America as a teller. She also worked at a place called Pick and Save, and she worked her way up from being a certified nurse assistant to a licensed vocational nurse to a registered nurse, and now she teaches. So I think she was a huge part of teaching me to be hungry, because she continued to go to school and work hard. I'm trying to think of one or two people that stuck out to me, and I would definitely say the two that stuck out to me the most were two Filipino women family members. One was my grandma. My grandmother was a hard worker, and she was constantly cleaning, and she could never just sit still. And I think that she taught me the importance of family, because that was number one, her number one priority. The other was my aunt, and you would go to my aunt's house, and on her piano you would see not just picture frames of her kids, but of all of us. And that also instilled a lot of the importance of family at a young age.
How has being Filipino shaped who you are now and where you are now in life?
It's funny that you asked that question, because I've been thinking about a lot of that lately, and how growing up Filipino in America has shaped who I am as a woman. I think it's important to talk about gender roles.
Sure.
I think that growing up in a household where there were a lot of male figures for me, I had most of my cousins that I looked up to were men.
Okay.
And in our household, the males made the decisions, and you know, even though women, you know, ran a lot of things. There was a lot of respect for elders, respect for your husband. There was just always a lot of respect. So if you had an older family member who was wrong because they were older, they were right.
Right, exactly.
So I think it's important to talk about gender roles because I grew up struggling with not being feminine enough, with having an opinion, and in some ways that was bad and disrespectful.
Yeah.
And also I was jealous that a lot of the things that the guys could do, the woman couldn't.
Like what?
Well, for one, I remember growing up and my father being upset if somebody I was dating wasn't driving and they were in the passenger seat of my car. My father really felt like a guy should be behind the wheel driving and in control. And I don't believe in that. I think that, a woman is just as capable to do many things that a man can do, including driving a car. And the idea of a man being the one responsible for bringing in the income. Yeah. And a woman being responsible for raising children. I think that women can do both. I think that men can do both. So I'm not in alignment with a lot of the traditional aspects of Filipino culture and what's expected of women and men traditionally.
Well, just to go off of that, when do you feel like a Filipino cultural trait that shaped you has really played into your career, or when you were out meeting with your clients? I see so much in your background kind of how unique you are. Like, you take such a holistic approach to criminal defense, so you try to highlight good traits in people who find themselves in bad situations. You've always represented low-wage and immigrant workers. Where in your career do you feel like it was really attributed to somewhere within Filipino culture?
It's funny that you asked that question as well, because I was talking to a girlfriend who's Filipino, and she came here in her late 20s. Yeah. And she was talking about how she worked in a place where her coworkers were all Caucasian, and they were talking about taking a road trip to Los Angeles from the Bay Area. And part of the conversation was the housing that they were going to have during the travels. And they really wanted to make sure that everybody, had their own separate rooms. And it was weird to her because she was used to sharing everything as being Filipino. So the place that she valet parked her car, the people that were working the garage were Filipino. And they said to her, "Oh, you're going to Los Angeles? Well, we're going to go to Los Angeles. Well, you can ride with us. You can stay with us." And she reflected on how different in that if we're Filipino, what's mine is yours. My door is always open to you. My refrigerator is always open to you. If there's a place, if there's even a sliver of a, piece of wood available on my floor, you can latag and sleep there. We're very generous and giving.
So true.
And so I think that, to be very straightforward, in the criminal defense world, most of my competitors are older white men. And being a Filipino woman in a white man's playing field, taking a more holistic approach has been a unique selling point of our law firm. Right. Specifically because when people come into our office, we're not just looking at their legal problems, we're looking at all of their problems. Right. Are you hungry? Did you eat? Do you have problems putting food on the table for you and your children? Yeah. How's employment? How's everything else happening in your life? What can we do to help you as if you were, a cousin or a kuya or an ate? So I think that, realistically speaking, most Filipino people are God-fearing, religious people. And I believe strongly in God, but I also believe that the values that come with Catholicism and Christianity is, doing good for others and having integrity. And I think that has helped us tremendously in the growth of our law firm as we continue to expand. Just doing the right thing when no one's watching is important.
Yeah. Well, I was about to ask, looking at your law firm and the culture and the relationships built within that, do you feel like there's any practices that are borrowed from kind of, the Filipino family culture? And
Absolutely. So at our law firm, we have 3 values: integrity, efficiency, and compassion. And the integrity we've already touched on because we know that Filipinos like to do the right thing. The compassion is definitely something that came from Filipino attributes. I think it's safe to say that Filipinos are some of the most emotionally intelligent, empathetic, and compassionate people in the world. When you travel, you can go anywhere in Asia, but Filipinos tend to be the most warm, welcoming country. So definitely integrity, definitely compassion. I have to say that efficiency is something different that I wouldn't say came from a Filipino attribute, mostly because growing up, I was taught that it was important to get a job with the government, that it was important to get a job with an employer, that it was important to work hard and not question authority. Right. So I think as far as being efficient is concerned, I don't believe in working hard. I believe in working smart.
Okay.
I think working smart is being efficient, and I think that a lot of Filipinos like to play it safe. And I think that if we really wanted to reach our highest potential as Filipino Americans, I think that means taking calculated risks despite what we grew up learning in Filipino households, which is just to very oftentimes submit.
Yeah. No, and I think that goes into my next question where I think that Filipinos tend to have this traditional, as you know, career trajectory where our parents want us to go into something stable, which is tends to be medicine, nursing, and anything healthcare related. And I think that falls into exactly what you were talking about. What really pushed you to go off-road maybe and start, take a risk and start your own practice?
Okay. Well, before I go into what made me go a different path from the traditional path of medicine, I want to recognize there's a lot of admiration in what they do. I think if all Filipinos went on strike, then essentially mail wouldn't be delivered, the airport wouldn't run, hospitals would shut down, and anything where you had service would probably go haywire. So I think that there's a lot of pride to be had in some of the career paths that Filipinos take. As far as I'm concerned, the fact of the matter is ignorance is what got me to my career path. Ignorance, blind ignorance. Like I said, I was studying in Italy and I was scared. And so I went to law school. But it was at law school that I learned to think differently. And not necessarily submit, but to question authority, to use logic rather than fear and emotion. And then when I started my practice, rather than try to perfect my craft as a lawyer, I also tried to increase my knowledge about being an entrepreneur, about being a business owner. And I think that anything that we want to do in life is always going to be easier when you have people who have done it before teaching you.
That's true.
And so as far as what caused me to go a different path, it was out of mostly desperation. When I graduated law school, I thought about the immense amount of student loans that I was going to owe. And I thought, I got to hustle. And you couldn't even believe some of the things that I did to hustle. I mean, one of those things was I remember not having any money in my account and somebody telling me about a Criminal Trial Lawyers Association luncheon and how I should go so that I could network with other attorneys. The luncheon was $50. I had $30 in my account. I was a broke, just out of law school student. And I remember borrowing the $50, going to that event, meeting other attorneys, being asked for a business card and not having one. But through that networking event, I met one attorney who let me do contract work, who introduced me to another attorney who let me do contract work. And before you knew it, I was doing a lot of contract work for other attorneys. Mind you, all of these attorneys that I was working for, Crystal, they were all white men. And I found a trend. And the trend that I found was that there's a lot of good legal work being done out there. It's just not being communicated. The number one complaint about attorneys is that they don't communicate what's happening in a client's case. And so I decided to take that and say, well, what are Filipinos really good at? Communicating. So why don't I start a law firm where we pride ourselves in over communication? And so that set the foundations for starting our law firm. I'm really excited because we just hired another attorney today and hired another attorney a month ago. So we're definitely growing.
Gosh. Congratulations. That's really exciting.
Thanks.
So just going off of that, it seems like you were taking the next best step, right? So what advice would you give to a Filipino American who is really wanting to go onto her own path, maybe onto entrepreneurship, maybe into the arts, maybe into film, something, diverging off of the traditional path that her family might, want for her? What kind of key advice would you give to that person?
I think one of the best pieces of advice that was given to me by a mentor early in my career was to explore different types of jobs to find out what you don't like. In order to help you identify what you do like. I think very often, it's a unfortunate situation when you first get out of high school and join college and they ask you what your major is. I mean, you're so young and they're like, so what do you want to do with your life?
Yeah.
It's like, what's going to be your major? And people stick to that major because they think they've already invested the time in it.
Exactly.
I don't think that people should... Well, let me rephrase that and give it, and let me use the Gestalt method, which is, telling you my experience rather than giving advice. In my experience, it's best to explore what options and different opportunities are out there for you to identify what your strengths are rather than our weaknesses.
Yeah.
I think as Filipino Americans, we tend to be very hard on ourselves.
Right. Like it has to be linear.
Right. And I don't think that we should focus on our weaknesses and what needs to be, what needs to be trained
corrected,
to be better or corrected. Right. Find out what your strengths are.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that are just more artistic than others. Yeah. I think that people should explore what they like to do and really identify what their strengths are, because it would be unfortunate for example, a Filipino American who was really good at providing, compassion and empathy to work in a library, putting books away and not having interaction with people. I think that's why a lot of Filipinos are good at nursing. We know how to tell people that you're cared for, even if you don't have family out there. So, I want to be clear that the best advice that I can give to anybody who wants to, explore different types of jobs is to just go out there and take a risk. I think that Filipinos, we tend to want to be perfect and safe and research and do things. Just go out and do it. If given an opportunity, say yes, and then figure out how it's going to happen later. If you're given a job opportunity in another state, just say yes. You'll figure out how to get there. You'll figure out how to get, housing.
Yeah, because I think there's this fear that, what if it's a wasted time of my life and wasted experience, when we're all about like really using our resources optimally, right? And like not wasting any time, including time. But there's always like a strength finding experience from that.
I'm glad that you bring that up, because I think as Filipinos, we can be very proud, but we can also be very humble. I think ego is the enemy. And I think that when we ask ourselves why we don't want to do something and it falls back to our ego, we have to ask ourselves whether that's getting in the way of a learning experience. What I want to say is that I think all Filipino women should use their voice to say what they really think and feel, in order to learn, because it's only when you fall or make mistakes that you really learn, what you could have done differently. And the only thing that's preventing you from doing that is your ego and making a mistake, right? I mean, name one person who never made a mistake. That's great.
Right.
I can't think of anybody.
That's so true. What is special about the Filipina American?
Well, aside from the fact that we win every beauty pageant in the world, let's see. Just kidding. What's special about the Filipina American? That's a tough question because there's so many things that are special about Filipina American. I think the most important things in what I've observed is resilience.
Yes.
I think tenacity, and humor.
Yes.
I think that some of the times that I've laughed the hardest, where my stomach hurt, was with other Filipinos because Filipinos are so raw.
Yeah.
And I love that, the realness, especially when it's in our native tongue.
Yeah.
So the resilience, I think that whenever you see a natural disaster happen in our country, or whenever you see, tragedy or trauma happen in our household, we always get up.
Yeah.
We just always get back up, and we're able to make fun of ourselves and laugh about it. So resilience and humor is definitely two traits that I love about Filipino Americans, on top of the fact that we win every beauty pageant ever.
Hair flip. No, I think that's the culmination of the two also, of just resilience plus humor.
You know what? I have to say one more thing about Filipino Americans that I think is important. The value of family. I actually take back that resilience and humor is the first part. I wanna replace that with family as being number one. Specifically because growing up and the things that we see is what molds us into the people that we are.
Yeah.
And having an abundance of family and learning the importance of family is something that we carry with us. And I cannot think of one Filipino that doesn't embrace family. And
So
even if they hate their family, they will still have their families back.
Exactly.
And I think that's important to note, and something that I definitely am proud of as far as being Filipino.
We carry that in our relationships with other people too, not just Filipinos. So we extend that kind of family relationship.
Look at all of the advertisements in the Philippines for anything. It's always surrounded around the value of families, right?
It's like it's normal to call folks kuya and ate who aren't in your family, because you're just acknowledging them as a brother and sister.
On the flip side, you know, as we talk on the flip side, bada bum bum bum. On the flip side, you know, I currently am living alone right now.
Yeah.
And I think that some family members feel sorry for me because I'm living alone, because it's not with a bunch of family members, you know, where everything is super happy and loud. I also think it's important to note that while family is important, I think really understanding yourself requires a lot of solace and reflection. I know that you've traveled a lot, which a lot of people are scared to do because they, you know, are afraid to travel alone. I encourage every Filipino American to travel alone.
And you just did that too.
I did.
To the Grand Canyons.
Oh, it was the best experience ever. And
hear about this.
Yeah, I'm grateful. I'm grateful to my friends who encouraged me to do that. So I'm lucky to have.
I'm just picturing you with a big backpack by yourself, like in the canyons. Oh my goodness, there's so much good stuff here. I feel like I could talk to you forever. I'm going to close with two really great questions.
Well, all your questions have been great.
Yes. Yeah, that's true. What is your favorite Filipino dish?
It would have to be chicken adobo or caldereta. With white rice, not brown rice, not a salad. No. I want some steaming hot white rice with some marinated meat and some sabaw poured over that white rice. Maybe a little bit of suka. Yeah.
I love it. And people say that adobo is like the most basic, like American mainstream Filipino dish, but it's really the best one. So, what is your favorite Filipino word and why?
I can tell you what my favorite Filipino word of today is.
Okay.
Not in life. Today, my favorite Filipino word is maldita, which some can interpret to be bitch. I think that the word itself has been used in different contexts, especially if you're a woman in the workplace and you are aggressive or assertive and certain about what you feel, want, or do, you're considered a bitch.
Yeah.
But if you use it in a slang kind of context, when you see a woman walking down the street with her head up high and she has the background to walk with her head up high, whether it means having a family that supports her and really knowing who she is within herself, that's a bad bitch.
Yes.
And so I think bad bitch could be used in a bad term, but at the same time, being bad can be good as long as you can back it up.
I love that. Yeah.
Snap, snap, snap,
Maldita.
snap.
Hashtag. We should start a hashtag with that. That's about it for my questions. Oh my goodness. I can literally keep asking you so many questions, and there's so much wisdom in everything you said. And I think it's really going to speak to so many young Filipinas. Your whole life you've dedicated it to serving other people, marginalized communities, underrepresented communities, and I just want to say thank you so much for your time and just who you are and your willingness to put yourself out here and, like you said, give voice and speak up. Thank you.
Thank you. I still have a lot to learn, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
Thank you. Okay,
bye.
Let's get food now. Thank you so much for listening. Would love if you can subscribe and or leave a review. And I can't wait to see you next time for the next Filipina on the Rise. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Feel free to leave a comment about what you thought. And if you haven't yet, follow on Instagram at Filipina on the Rise. I hope to see you and hear from you there. Thanks, everyone.